Hello and welcome guys to triker112, and today we'll be learning how variables are stored in the memory in C++ versus in Python. So, and one more thing, you might have wondered how we can change the type of data we store in a variable in Python, and it doesn't give an error, but it does give an error in C++. So we'll also be learning that why does that happen. Okay, so let's start. Okay, so for example, I have an integer in C++. I have an int a. I've initialized this to 112. Okay. Similarly, in Python, I have a variable a and I have initialized this to 112. So now what happens is a memory is allocated in the memory. Okay. So it's generally 4 byte or 8 byte according to a system. So it's usually an hexadecimal number, just but for the sake of understanding, right now we'll take it as an integer. So for example, the memory address here is 200. Okay, so on 200, in the memory address 200, the value 112 is stored, and this integer a is referring to this 200. Similarly, in Python, let's say we have a memory address 400. Okay, and on that 112 value is stored, and this a is also referring to this 400. So now let's say I want to change the value. In C++ I do a equals 69. Okay, so similarly in Python I do a equals 69. So now what happens in C++ is that only the value gets changed. Okay, so my compiler or whatever, I don't know what happens, but something goes to 200 memory address, that is 200, and what happens is it changes the value from 112 to 69. Okay, so this one is not valid anymore. The a is still referring to 200, so a is still referring to 200, only the value stored in 200 memory address has been changed. Python, it's a bit different. What happens is that a totally new memory address is created. A totally new, so for example, 800 on memory address 800. Now I store the value 69 here, and instead of referring to 400, my variable now simply refers to this memory address 800. Okay, so what's the difference? So we saw in C++ that the memory remains same, just the only the value gets changed. But in case of Python, the memory changes as memory address changes as well as the value changes. So to sum it up, I can write it down here. Memory address doesn't change. Okay, so memory address doesn't change, but in case of Python, memory address changes. And I can show you I will show you this while coding. Okay, so now let's confirm that by writing code. So what I've done here, first of all, we're talking about C++ here. So what I've done here is that I've declared an integer a and I've initialized this to 112. Okay. Next, I'm printing out the memory address of a. So this ampersand sign that you see, that's used to print out the memory address of a variable. Okay. Next, I'm changing the value of a to be 69. Furthermore, I'm again printing out the memory address of a. So since this is C++, what we expect to happen is that the memory address remains same. Okay, so now let's run this. I'll hit run. Okay, so here's our output, and you can see we have got two memory addresses there. So and they are exactly the same. So we have confirmed here that the memory address in case of C++ doesn't change. Okay. Now let's go on to Python. So I've already written the code for Python as well. So here's Python. First, I have declared an integer a and stored the value 112 into it. Next, I'm printing out the ID method. I'm printing out the memory address. So this ID method, it's used to print out the memory address of a variable. Next, I'm changing the value of a to be 69, and lastly, I'm again printing out the memory address of a. Now, since this is Python, what I expect to happen is that the memory address should change. So I'm gonna hit run here, and it will take some time, and here is our output. So you can see this first one is 109.22.464, while the second one it's 109.2.1088. So what we see here is that the memory address in case of Python do change. Now the next thing I want to talk to you about is how can we store different types of data in the same variable in Python, but we can't do that in C++. So you might have noticed that while declaring a variable in C++, we need to specifically tell the compiler what type of data are we storing in it. Is it an integer? So we type int. Is it a float? Is it a double? Is it a long? Is it a string? So whatever type of data we need to tell the compiler. But in case of Python, that's not the case. So in Python, we just simply write the variable name and store whatever value we want. This is an example of what statically typed versus dynamically typed languages do. In statically typed, the type checking is done at compile time, while in dynamically typed languages, type checking is done while runtime. So C++ is a statically typed language, Python is a dynamically typed language. So what happens is, as you saw in C++, the memory address doesn't change. Okay, so it was earlier 200 and it still is 200. So what happens is, while declaring an integer, so I only specify the memory to be 4 bytes or 8 bytes according to my computer. Now if I want to store a long integer, okay, so I want to store a long int, okay. So I want to store this, and it doesn't store, but I don't I sorry, I mean this doesn't have a value of 4 bytes, okay. So I can't store the value I want to store in this 4 bytes, okay. It only has 4 bytes of memory, so I can't do that. But in case of Python, what I do is I create a totally new memory. So if I have a new memory, I don't care what is the size of that memory, okay. So if I want to store a bigger value, I can just increase the memory size. If I want to store a smaller value, I can just decrease the memory. So that's why you can even store strings in Python. So for example, I did 112, a is equal to 112. So it was referring to a memory location, but I can do this: a equals to a string hello, and this is perfectly fine in Python, but it is not in case of C++, and we have to tell it that it was an integer a, and now I cannot store a string a hello. That will just throw me a compiler error, okay. So that's it for this video, and thank you for watching.